Last week, the world's first fully autonomous medical imaging AI got regulatory clearance in the European Union.
Artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence.
What are you talking about? Artificial intelligence?
The company, called Oxipit, is bringing us one step closer to AI-powered doctors. I'm Dr. Ben Miles. I help scientists build startups around their discoveries and investors make informed investments into science-based companies. In this series, we look at the technologies and the ventures that are bringing us one step closer to solving major problems. ChestLink is the first fully autonomous AI that can scan chest x-rays and automatically send patient reports on those that it sees as totally healthy, those with no abnormalities and those that don't require any intervention from a radiologist. In a recent trial of the technology, Oxipit said in a statement that ChestLink made 0 clinically relevant errors during a pilot program at multiple locations. This is a really interesting product strategy that these guys are taking, choosing to focus on confirming cases with no disease rather than looking for, say, a certain type of lung or certain type of chest cancer and trying to improve the detection capabilities.
Look, the arrival of strong artificial intelligence has been inevitable for decades.
AI autonomy in medical imaging isn't actually driven by our technology capability, but rather by the current systematic healthcare shortcomings. According to the WHO, radiology departments around the world are understaffed by about 33%, and 2/3 of the world's population doesn't have any access to diagnostic medical imaging. Because ChestLink is aiming to only produce automated reports for chest x-rays where it's highly confident that the image features no abnormalities, this can potentially mean that radiologists save huge amounts of time by automating a significant portion of the high confidence healthy patient reporting, where a radiologist's expert input doesn't really add much clinical value. What this does mean is that radiologists can focus on the cases that do exhibit some form of disease or pathology that are much more complex and much more risky to try and diagnose. At this stage, ChestLink's model is to operate in the background, shadowing the radiologist. The platform marks no finding x-rays and compares them with the reports made by the radiologist. If there's ever any mismatch between what the radiologist said and what ChestLink AI says, then that result is analyzed by the Oxipit team and the team at the medical institution. This strategy is probably informed by how difficult it is to actually integrate AI into healthcare, even though the evidence shows that a person can more reliably and more cost-effectively be diagnosed by an AI than by a doctor. The whole process of adoption of AI into medicine is incredibly contentious, and radiologists have actually spent the past few years pushing back on efforts to fully automate even small parts of their job. But it doesn't stop at just doctors and clinicians. Even patients are often reluctant to bring AI into clinical care, citing a number of perfectly reasonable sounding ideas. That medicine is usually complex, that it involves linking what you see versus what the patient tells you versus their medical background, and what if something goes wrong, or what if it misses something? A summary in the Harvard Business Review reporting on a paper forthcoming in the Journal of Consumer Research showed that a strong resistance in patients to medical AI seemed really to stem from the belief that AI doesn't take into account an individual's idiosyncratic characteristics and circumstance, as in people believe that they are unique to themselves and that they believe that includes their health situation. Essentially, I guess they're worried about being treated like a robot by a robot.
You're a robot.
I found a really interesting study that highlighted to me maybe a more human problem, though, associated with not integrating AI into healthcare. It turns out when engaged in a demanding task, attention can act like a set of blinders, making it possible for things you should otherwise notice to pass unnoticed right in front of your eyes. This phenomena is known as sustained inattentional blindness, and it's best known from Simmons and Chabry's 1999 study in which observers watch a ball passing game and try and count the number of times that the white team passes the ball between them. I'll play an example for you now and just try and count how many times the white team passes the ball. What most people don't notice is that there is a human in a gorilla suit wandering into the scene halfway through the game. You get brownie points if you notice that that actually happened, but most people notice it because they've heard about it before, in which case you're cheating. The question of concern though, I guess, is does inattentional blindness still occur when an observer is an expert, highly trained in doing that primary task? Now, there is a little bit of evidence that expertise actually mitigates this effect. However, when Potchin in 2006 showed radiologists chest x-rays as a part of a patient's annual exam where the clavicle or the collarbone had been removed, roughly 60% of the radiologists failed to even notice the collarbone was missing. A more recent study asked 24 radiologists to perform a familiar lung nodule detection task. A tiny gorilla, 48 times larger than that of an average nodule, was inserted in the last case of 5 that they reviewed. 83% of radiologists did not report seeing the gorilla. And the interesting thing is that they were running eye tracking software during this experiment, and actually the radiologists were taking a good amount of time, sometimes up to a full second, staring directly at the gorilla, failing to even identify that they were looking at something totally out of context. Even expert searchers operating in the domain of expertise are vulnerable to inattentional blindness. But could this be true of AI also? Well, maybe, but that's where Oxipit's approach is particularly interesting. A doctor looks at a scan for things that look like something they've seen before, matching a particularly shaped shadow or a highlight that they know is a red flag for some disease. This gives them, however, that problem of inattentional blindness. They are looking for things they expect to see, so they miss things like missing collarbones or tiny gorillas. The ChestLink AI is actually doing the reverse. It's checking that scans match to what it knows are healthy examples. Anything that doesn't match across the entire image gets flagged, gorilla or otherwise. This subtle but arguably really important systematic difference maybe could also solve a different pressing issue: man vision. When you go and open the fridge looking for something, and even though it's right in front of you, you don't see it because you thought it had a red label or a different shaped bottle or something like that. If someone can fix that, I guess that's where the big bucks are. AI implementation is at its early stages, but will be an absolutely critical part of medicine going forward. Even if it's just companioned with a medical expert to begin with, just so that it can observe and learn over time. What it will do is help us stay astute, stop us from missing those things that we otherwise might miss because we're a bit tired or because we're a bit distracted. And most importantly, it will pool those observations across hundreds, if not thousands, if not millions of various circumstances, and keep that knowledge and keep that experience at the fingertips of doctors. And we're expecting the first healthcare organizations to be using these sorts of autonomous tools as early as next year, bringing us one step closer to AI-powered doctors. If you like this video, do leave a like and hit the subscribe button. If you want to follow what I get up to on a weekly basis, I've started a newsletter, which you can find down below. This week, I met some investors off of Dragon's Den. It was kind of fun. As always, thanks very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.